It's 106 miles to Chicago. We've got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes. It's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses. Hit it!
Yes, welcome on in, everybody, to the Saturday Night Network for a very special edition of SNL Stories here on the SNN. My name is John Schneider. So excited to be back with you here as a presentation of LateNighter.com and with a couple of very special correspondents who were there at the Blues Brothers convention, the sequel, to talk about their experience and share some of those interviews with you. So without further ado, let's bring in James Stephens. James, how are you?
I'm great, John. Yes, Blues Brothers Con, the sequel. I was fortunate enough to, in 2022, be there for the Blues Brothers inaugural version. And this is actually the sequel because last year in 2023, it was unfortunately canceled due to COVID. But the sequel brought more con elements we'll talk about here in a little bit. But one of the most exciting pieces of this venture was to be able to share it with my co-host, the great Bill Kenney. How are you, Bill?
James, I'm great. John, what a thrill it was, and what a great time we had. A very long day, but we got to do some amazing interviews and walk around this very impressive structure that's been around since 1858. Meeting people like Jim Belushi and Dan Aykroyd was high up on the list, but James, meeting you in person for the first time was right up there too.
Right back at you, brother. It was a great visit, and you know, John has brought all of us, the community together. So it's just kind of fun very awesome to meet you in person, man. That was a good time.
Yes, definitely.
I'm looking forward to seeing how the two of you work together, because you did conduct a bunch of interviews. And for those who don't know, about the Blues Brothers Con and really what the Blues Brothers are, because maybe you are a younger fan of the show and you haven't checked out some of the older seasons of SNL. So, very famous characters from the 70s originally was John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd together on the show, and their love for blues and blues bands. And they got to perform them and be musical guests on the show as the Blues Brothers, which all led up to them being in the 1980 Blues Brothers movie. Very famous movie, a lot of scenes at the old Joliet prison that you two went to, and then of course continued for many generations even after the passing of John Belushi, where we had John Goodman as part of the group, Jim Belushi, who was on our podcast today and we're going to get to hear from, and just the Blues Brothers became such a cultural phenomenon that it's so cool that they had these conventions. So for you, James, to be back there for the sequel this year, was that an exciting experience overall? How was it?
Absolutely. They upped their game. The sequel was a little bit more of a con. There was a car show last time, but more so this time. There's several Bluesmobiles, different era police vehicles that were there on display. Ecto ones, actually, in the Aykroyd tangent, paying homage to some of his other films. Many food vendors, merch vendors, the official Blues Brothers Con official merchandise was there. And all of this in the setting, the backdrop was Old Joliet Prison, which Bill, to be able to conduct interviews really in one of those spaces was a little unique, was it not?
It definitely was. And James and I, when we talked beforehand, we're both fans of going to old TV sites, movie sites. So to walk in this building, and James, you said you had been there before, but to walk in there and be able to, take pictures of where John's being marched in by the guards at the beginning, kind of see where he walks out and meets Dan's Elwood with the Bluesmobile was fantastic. And the building that we ended up doing the interviews in was an old factory, which our guide, Sylvia, was kind enough to tell us about, where they made things like brooms, where they, the prisoners would go and work. And it was 150 degrees in there with no equipment. So I can only imagine, I know these were bad dudes, you had the Leopold and Loebs of the world, but I can't imagine how hot it was in there with all these machines going and being in there for 12, 15 hours and working hard. We worked hard too, but we didn't sweat quite that much, James.
Indeed. It was a big shout out to obviously Joliet Area Historic Museum, the folks who have sort of reopened the site as a museum in 2018, I believe. Blues Brothers, several films and TV shows. Prison Break, a Fox TV show from 2005, 2006 era, was also filmed there. So a filming location, not as
One of
your
my favorite shows.
it's kind of cool to be there. So yeah.
Yeah. So, as hot as it was to, in the prison, I'm sure these interviews are going to be very hot. So I'm excited to listen to them coming up here in just a bit. James, why don't you tell the listeners who we have on the docket today that you two got to speak to at Blues Brothers Con, the sequel?
Yes, coming up here on the podcast, we have Daniel de Visé, author of The Blues Brothers. Simply, the title is The Blues Brothers, the elongated title, The Blues Brothers, An Epic Friendship and the Rise of Improv and the Making of an American Film Classic. So he'll be with us. Luke Pisano, son of the late Judy Belushi Pisano. We have Tom Bones Malone on the podcast, who we've had on before separately, as well as with his dear friend Paul Schaefer previously. Obviously, Tom Bones Malone, band member, musician, arranger, and of course our guests, both Jim Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, the men of the hour, as they say, will be on the podcast as well. It's a great package that I hope you will enjoy.
Yeah, I'm going to be hearing these interviews for the first time with all of you. So I'm really pumped to get to hear how James and Bill spoke to all of these amazing people, and just really want to thank everybody over at the Blues Brothers Con for making this happen. So without further ado, let's send you to our first interview coming up right now. Yes, we are here at the Blues Brothers Con, the sequel. We are so excited to have with us Daniel de Visé, author of this book, The Blues Brothers. The Blues Brothers, An Epic Friendship and Rise of Improv and the Making of an American Film Classic. This is a fantastic book, and this is a great opportunity to speak with you today, Daniel. Thanks so much for being with us.
It's a pleasure. It's great to be here at the convention, too. This place is crazy.
So I know, Bill, you've read the book, or you've listened to the audio.
I've listened to the audio, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this. You were impressed with just the approach.
It was such an interesting approach that you took, and I'd love for you to speak on that a bit. How you came to choose, starting at both of their beginnings of their lives until they merge on SNL and the Blues Brothers.
Yeah, I never wanted it to be just a book about the movie. I wanted it to be a dual biography about a friendship. And everybody I met along the way, I think, agreed with that approach, because it was a great friendship. It was one of the all-time great professional entertainment friendships. Aykroyd has said as much, and this movie, as it happens, is the one, I think, greatest filmed memorial to the friendship. It's the greatest artifact of the friendship. So the movie ends up being sort of the second half of the book. And I built it around the story of these two guys it's kind of like a bromance, these two guys who were dear friends.
Yeah. So are you a fan of SNL? Did you come to this material because you were a fan of the Blues Brothers, or because of SNL, or a little bit of both?
Yes. Yes and yes. I'm old enough that I remember the night the Rolling Stones came on SNL, which was, I think, season 4 maybe.
Yep.
I mean,
Premiere.
Yep.
I watched that episode, and I remember Mick's voice was kind of hoarse, and I was like, and I had this shelf of bootleg videotapes. My father's house was about a mile west of Wrigley Field in the city, and these bootleg videotapes were all my favorite films. I would show them to my friends over and over, and one of my all-time favorites then and now was the Blues Brothers. And in fact, I had, I think, 5 different John Landis films on this shelf of films. So it was kind of it was a passion for me. And when I got to meet John Landis and talk to him, I told him all this, and I was kind of a fanboy, and conversations we had led to the book happening.
It's fantastic.
So, how did you get there from the book? Because you've written several books over the years. You're a Pulitzer Prize winner with a conglomerate of folks.
Well, this book happened as a direct result of my love for Chicago and being a Chicagoan, and this film was a huge deal for me and for all my friends because it was it felt like the first Chicago film ever made. So we get back to that, and then B, because I wrote a book about B.B. King, this long 500-page biography of B.B. King, and that was several years ago now. But it was, I guess, during the pandemic, and I had to talk to John Landis, the filmmaker, because man, why wasn't B.B. King on the Blues Brothers? I found Landis's phone number and called him. And I just got him on the phone and asked him. And he told me that, oh, well, B.B. was booked. His manager, Sid Seidenberg, the great Sid Seidenberg, said, no, he can't do it. And so I got to, Landis is a great raconteur. And so I get him talking. And, Landis is like, well, the real story of the Mission from God. Like, really? Well, tell me, do. And he got to talking about this passion for the great rhythm and blues artists that Aykroyd had, and Belushi and Landis himself. And I was just intrigued and thought, man, that could be maybe a book there somewhere, right? So that's really how it happened.
Cool. And you interviewed so many great folks, right? Can you just give us a short list of how you came to just, arriving at some of the data and the history stories behind it?
Wow. Starting with Belushi's and Aykroyd's childhoods, I spoke to a whole bunch of people who grew up in Wheaton, Illinois with John Belushi, a whole bunch of his old friends, a number of people who grew up in Canada with Dan Aykroyd, his friends from childhood, from high school, from college. Most of the fellow cast of Belushi in Second City in Chicago, which was Belushi's kind of big first gig in Chicago. A number of people who worked with him at National Lampoon in New York. I spoke to some people who had worked with Aykroyd when he was first with Second City in Toronto. I'm sorry, it's a long list. I spoke to some of the fellow travelers when they were on the founding cast of Saturday Night Live, which was then called Saturday Night. One of my favorite sources was Rosie Schuster, who was the wife of Lorne Michaels at the time, And then I talked to everybody I could find who was remotely involved in filming the Blues Brothers film. From Landis, hours and hours, we probably spent 30 or 40 or 50 hours on the phone talking to each other over and his crew, his lieutenants, all the people who made the film with him, cinematographer, assistant director, producer, Big Bob Weiss, and then most of the guys in the Blues Brothers band who were still alive. I think I spoke to all but maybe one of the still living members of the Blues Brothers band. And I spoke to Aykroyd. Thank goodness, I was incredibly grateful to speak to him, even down to where he was helping me map out his route to school. When he walked to school, and it was one of those 5 miles to school,
right.
In Ottawa, Canada. Yeah.
That's great. Do you have any interesting anecdotes from the book, those that haven't read it yet, that they may not know from the extensive coverage of the Blues Brothers through the years?
Oh goodness, so many. Just here at Joliet Prison, for example, I've got some doozies. The warden of this prison, who I interviewed, the guy who was the warden at the time when they filmed here, was their special guest at the Sneak Joint, which was the illicit speakeasy bar that they opened near downtown Chicago. And so when the warden is sitting there at this sort of semi-illegal bar, somebody, and I think it might have been Jackson Brown, hands him a film canister that turned out to be filled with weed, which was not legal in 1979. And so the warden, not missing a beat, just said, and put the cap back on the film canister and handed it to the next dude. A couple of guys in the crew were carrying said substance when they showed up here to film to this property, which was a working prison at the time. And so Landis and probably Belushi himself had to talk the staff out of arresting them.
Oh my goodness.
And there's stuff happy and there's stuff sad. The biggest shock to me in researching this book that I certainly didn't know, and horrifying, was the fact that John Belushi, nearly died 2 different times. One week in October, and that was the last week of filming here in Chicago. It was the week when they would have filmed that big gas station explosion that doesn't end up being in the film.
Right.
And they also, I think, it's the scene with Twiggy. Nobody young knows who Twiggy is. She was this very thin
Yes.
British model. That scene at the gas station, they were filming that, and you can tell Belushi's not 100% there. He was really out of it that week, and he basically overdosed twice, and they had to break down the door to his suite to revive him.
That was something when I was listening to your book that I had never heard myself either. So that was fascinating.
And then just all the people who weren't in the movie who might have been if things had worked out otherwise. Starting with B.B. King, because he was booked, he was busy. So they put him in the mural at Ray's Music Exchange, sort of in memoriam to him. I mean, he was very much alive, but he was out touring. The John Lee Hooker scene on Maxwell Street should have included Muddy Waters. But Muddy fell ill right before they shot it, and with a film production, you can't move it really. You can't like change the date, so they had to pull Muddy. It was going to be like, I think it was going to be Muddy and John Lee Hooker kind of more doing like folk guitar, and they would have done a Muddy Waters song. And then Little Richard was going to be the preacher originally, but Little Richard, who had this on again, off again love with, the Lord and the church, was very religious at the time when the film was being made, and his religious ardor precluded his participation in the film. So that's why we got James Brown as a consolation, if you can imagine.
Worked out pretty well.
Which worked out pretty well.
Worked out pretty well. So you mentioned that you were a fan of the film all growing up for years. As you were working on the book, was there something you were just really excited to ask one of these interview subjects, or maybe just what about the film did you just make it become so fond in your youth?
I'm not a film writer. My previous books, one of them, my Andy Griffith, Don Knotts dual biography, was about Hollywood and about television and a little bit about film, but I don't really know film. So everything about the making of this film was fascinating and new to me. I had no idea how they do it, really. And so just the idea that they rolled into Chicago, took the city over, and I was living there at the time, and they took it over. I mean, they shut down entire corridors, urban downtown corridors, with all these like dudes with walkie-talkies blocking off these intersections so they could film 100-mile-an-hour chase scenes. And so basically, most of the outdoor sequences in the film, I learned, were filmed in Chicago in like August, September, October of 1979. I never knew that. I mean, you watch the film and it's just a film. Yeah. And it looks like it's all shot in order, but it sure wasn't. And then it turns out a whole bunch of the interiors, most of them were filmed in November, December, January in LA on the Universal Studios lot, basically. So anytime they're indoors, basically, this is being filmed later sequentially. And it's not real, most of it. I mean, it's all mostly on sound stages. Even that icky tunnel where Jake romances Carrie Fisher and then drops her to the muddy ground, that wasn't a real tunnel, and that kind of blew my mind, because I would have always assumed, and most Chicagoans to this day are going to assume that's a real tunnel somewhere in Lincoln Park or something. I don't know if that answers your question, but all that was fascinating to me.
All that is fascinating, especially as a fan of the film over the years, all of us. And you also mentioned, I can't remember if we were on recording yet, or this was an earlier conversation that you and I had, but just the first sort of Chicago film. Like, what does Illinois just look? How do they respond to the Blues Brothers in this film, in your mind?
If you're old enough to remember, there weren't really Chicago films in the 1960s and 1970s. I think Cooley High was one, and there was a couple other, and apparently there was a porn industry, but regular Hollywood films were very few in Chicago in those years. And so I didn't grow up seeing Chicago on film. And so the Blues Brothers ended up being just about the first big Chicago film I ever saw. So when the gang came into town, well, obviously this would have happened before they came into town. Probably when Big Bob Weiss, the producer, approached the city, he figured out things had changed. For 2.5 decades, Mayor Richard J. Daley, the elder Daley, who ran the city with an iron fist, had shut down filming in Chicago. And the reason was there'd been a production of a kind of like an FBI series in the 50s that had besmirched Chicago cops. I think they showed one on the take or something. And Daley's like, that's it. We're wrapping things up. There's not going to be any filming here anymore. And there wasn't for like 25 years. But when the Blues Brothers was being conceived, Chicago had a new mayor. Mayor Daley was gone. I think he may have been dead by then. And Jane Byrne was Chicago's first female mayor. And she was very happy to open up the city to filming. And also not too unhappy with the idea of a convoy rolling across Richard J. Daley Plaza, the namesake downtown mall. The reason being that Daley's cronies were giving her a hard time. They were being sexist, calling her bad names some of which I can't really say, because it was still a very sexist, kind of misogynist crowd that ran the city back then.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about the history, and we're both SNL super fans, and when you look at the swath of the history of the show, they don't have a lot of luck with characters becoming SNL movie stars. We've seen about a dozen of them. Other than Wayne's World, this is really the only one. What do you think it is about these characters that resonated and still makes them relevant today, 45 years later, where you can show it to a whole new generation of people?
Not being a film critic or even really a film writer, I'm going to take a gander that this was due to the singular genius, I would say, of Dan Aykroyd. Dan Aykroyd wrote the script. I mean, he created it out of nothing. There was no story. These weren't established. There was no established narrative here. No. These were characters he created with his sort of genius mind. And when they decided they were going to go on SNL in 1978, he kind of, in his mind, concocted these backstories for these two imaginary characters, because he was good at doing that. I think he was a little bit method, and so he wanted to know who he was when he went on stage. And then so Belushi did Animal House. He was Bluto, and that made him a huge star and made Animal House into a smash. So there was going to be another Belushi film, no question. The only question was what film it was going to be. And in 1978, when that decision was being made, all that Belushi cared about was the blues and the Blues Brothers. Aykroyd had turned him on to it. Curtis Salgado, who's performing here tonight,
right,
had turned Belushi on to the blues separately, so Belushi was ready to go. And it was like, the Blues Brothers, we're going to do a movie, so Dan, go write one. So Dan Aykroyd went and wrote a brilliant script. I'm dishing, and I don't want to swell his head, but I mean, because he also wrote Ghostbusters out of just thin air.
Yeah.
I mean, those are two brilliant, amazing movies that he just created out of his head. So I have to hand it to him.
Absolutely.
No, for sure. Daniel, this means so much that you're spending time with us, because this is a fantastic book. Is there anything, what can we share with our community of fans about the book, about you, just anything that you want to plug, or how can they find you or the book?
Well, the people who reviewed this book in the Wall Street Journal and Washington Post talked about, wow, why would there be a book about the Blues Brothers? And here's the reason. Here's the answer to that question. It is an incredibly important movie. First, honestly, and Aykroyd would agree, he'd be the first to say, the number one reason why it's so important is as a monument to the great rhythm and blues artists it's a musical. It's a crazy car crash rock and roll musical, rhythm and blues musical, starring Aretha, James Brown, and all the greats of rhythm and blues. That's the most important thing about this movie and why it is immortal. Second would be that it's a massively important, massively amazing comedy, one of the great, all-time great comedies, one of the greatest, it's probably the greatest John Landis film, and probably just about the greatest film associated with anybody from that improv movement of the 1970s. What else is there? Groundhog Day is equally brilliant, but didn't have Aretha in it, so.
Right, there it is. There it is.
Well, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate your time, Daniel. Make sure you check out the book. It's called The Blues Brothers, An Epic Friendship, The Rise of Improv, and the Making of an American Film Classic.
Thank you, guys.
Let's welcome you back to the old Joliet Prison historic site for the Blues Brothers. Who's ready to hear them? We are close. Before we do that, I want to introduce two very special guests by way of introducing one special guest. This gentleman has one of the premier Saturday Night Live, if not the premier Saturday Night Live podcast that exists in this country, the Saturday Night Network. He has been working hard all day, interviewing people behind the scenes. Please check out Saturday Night Network, live from Blues Brothers Con, interviewing all the talent here today. And he's introducing a very special guest. But first I'm going to introduce him, Mr. James Stephens from Saturday Night Network. James.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, everybody. Blues Brothers Con, the sequel. This book. Do you know about this book? The Blues Brothers, An Epic Friendship, The Rise of Improv, and the Making of an American Film Classic. We have the author here today, Daniel de Visé. Daniel, come on out here. Can you tell us the origin? What caused you to go, okay, now is the time to write a book on this subject?
I'll do the quick answer. I'd written a book about Andy Griffith and Don Knotts called Andy and Don, and it was like a bromance story of a friendship. And I've always been looking for another dual biography about two dudes who were really, really close friends. And so I was writing a book about B.B. King a few years ago. And that caused me to call John Landis, the filmmaker, because I wanted to know why B.B. King wasn't in The Blues Brothers. Turns out he was booked, he was really busy. But I got to talking to John Landis, and John Landis, who's a great raconteur, was like, well, you know, there's a really good story about the real mission from God. And that got me to thinking about The Blues Brothers.
Tonight, The Blues Brothers Con, the sequel, is dedicated to Judy Belushi Pisano and her memory. Absolutely, and I say that with a lump in my throat as I look at the back cover of this jacket where she has this beautiful testimonial about this book. Anything about Judy and the family that you care to share?
Just that Judy Belushi was amazing. She was an amazing help in doing the book. Every time I would hear behind the scenes that I would email one of her friends, one of John's friends, one of Judy's friends, and they would ask, hey, Judy, is it okay? Can I do this? She'd say, yes, please do. Because I was doing a celebratory book.
I'm telling you, as a true fan of both Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi, the Belushi legacy, and the Blues Brothers, you need to check this book out. It is fantastic.
Yes, we are here with Luke Pisano. He is a son of the wonderful, late Judy Belushi Pisano. Luke, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on.
This is excellent. It was 2021. The Saturday Night Network had Judy, a very special episode where on SNL Stories, I know you have checked it out because you've talked about it. It was one of those things. It was not just a fan favorite, but it was really heartwarming as well because she was such a wonderful soul and just had a great memory, was talking about so many things over the years. Her involvement in so many of the things that people are here for the Blues Brothers Con have Judy's fingerprints on so much. So it's exciting to be here. This photo that we have right here, I don't know if folks can see it well or not, but I'm honored to have it. It is a precious memento where she signed "These Are the Best Days," and I bring that up as I want to ask you about this, Luke. That is actually was my introductory to your mother, in the sense that I came upon one of her pieces of music where she was performing it herself. She's playing the ukulele, and it was at the very end credits of Belushi documentary that she had a hand in helping to produce. And the way she told it to me was she just sort of, I don't know, knew that they were recording it and we're going to use it on that. But it was so precious and melted my heart, really, as I listened to it, that I was so compelled to reach out to her and tell her how much I enjoyed the music. So it was really the music that brought Judy and James, in this particular case, together. And I know that you wanted to really talk about her music today. So let's go right there first, if you don't mind, Luke, to just talk about how music meant, what that music meant to your mom.
Yeah, and again, thank you guys for having me on. It's such an honor. She was. I remember talking to her about before she came on your show, and she was saying, "What should I bring my ukulele?" And I said, "I think it's because you had mentioned it was because of the music." I said, "Of course," and she was looking for ways to share what she had been doing. And yes, I think to your point, the entire festival, from my perspective, from what I'm trying to help her do, because I've watched her so closely develop her music since she got sick in 2020 and began making her music. And actually 2 years ago, she tried to sing on stage here. She had it was difficult. It didn't quite sound like she wanted to. And at the time, actually, she thought it was laryngitis. And we found out later that it was actually, unfortunately, a tumor that was pressing on her vocal cord. But like I was saying, this festival, I think, was an opportunity to share the music then, and I think it is again here. We're going to try to honor her memory in the music, and I think it's just such a great opportunity, and I'm really excited to share some of the stuff that we've been preparing for tonight before the Blues Brothers come on.
I want to, before we end our time today, talk a little bit about what that tribute will be tonight, and all the things that we can expect in terms of just celebrating your mom and her wonderful legacy. So I've got the great Bill Kenney here, who's one of our best podcasters and has been with the Saturday Night Network since the beginning. So we were talking about how much we were looking forward to having you on, Luke. So
yeah, it's really a pleasure. When your mom came on that podcast in 2021, I mean, we were about a year into the podcast, but we hadn't really started the SNL Stories, and she kind of led the way and gave credence to a brand new section of our podcasting and gave it some legitimacy. So I want to thank you just from that perspective, having her on. But can you tell me a little bit about, what she talked to you about as far as, being involved in the Blues Brothers movie? What did she do? Obviously, she has her cameo as a cocktail waitress with Rosie Schuster, but...
You know the character.
I do.
That's impressive. Not many people do. I think my mom is really the unsung hero with the Blues Brothers. I'm sorry, I said this earlier. I'm like afraid to touch anything, so that's why I'm sitting here very stiff. But she really was a pioneer. I think in keeping the characters alive. She wrote an entire book called Blues Brothers Private, which is details all of the characters' backstories. And on top of that, just being I think just championing the brand. From the House of Blues to, she was working on getting it on to Broadway from other stages around the world to, just really keeping Jake and Elwood and the spirit of the blues alive over the course of the time between when John passed and when she passed last month. I think she is really the unsung hero of the Blues Brothers. Back then, I think it was a lot of small things. She claims, I can't verify this, maybe you don't have to ask Danny, but she claims it was her idea for the Blues Mobile, which is kind of a funny thing. She'd seen something with Batman, and she said, "Oh my God, these guys need a Batmobile." And then I think she said that John said the Blues Mobile, and that's rumored to be how that came to be. Of course, Danny wanting, I'm probably taking that and running, 20 miles with it. I just think in general, I think what I'm happy to talk about today, and I hope people listening that maybe don't know who my mom was and her story, being married to John from, together since high school until he passed away, was really a part of the creative team, I think, behind it, and then championing that, for 45 years afterwards. And it was really remarkable what she was able to do. And I'm honored to be a small piece of that legacy, and I'm still running the Instagram. I'm still doing some things myself with the brand, trying to support Danny and Jim and what they do, and hopefully continue to the characters for, hopefully decades more if we can get people to join us.
kind of just going back to the music a little bit. Of course, James Taylor. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's a great family bond between the Taylor family and you and your family. James Taylor, The Long and Winding Road was a piece of music that was he was a musical guest and performed that.
I believe so, yes.
As a tribute, but there are other Taylors that have intersected with you and your family, right?
So I'm really excited tonight. We there's so much to tackle. You opened a lot of doors. So yes, the Taylor family and my family are very close. I'm honored to say Ben Taylor's is here tonight. James and Carly's son Ben, and Kate Taylor, who was James's sister and who was here last time we were here. And
she was doing some backup.
She was doing some backup, right? They are going to be performing some of Judy's songs. So Judy she wrote a in the twilight of her life from when she was sick. She was diagnosed with cancer in 2020, and she just started playing ukulele and she just started writing songs. And as her son, my mom was so cute. She's She's a very
I love hearing you say that because
she's very cute.
every time I kept saying precious, but yes, it's cute. Yeah.
She's fucking cute.
Yes, you can say
Am I allowed to
that.
swear on this?
Yes,
yes,
absolutely.
you can.
Yes, you
She's,
can fucking swear.
She was very like she had an edge to her.
Yeah,
But she was very cute, and she started writing these songs. And so, of course, when she was like, "I want to play you this song," I was gonna say, "Oh, this is great." And keep in mind, she's sick, so it's like, what I'll support anything going on. And she started singing these songs, and they're like reminiscent. And I'm obviously biased, but truly, and I think when you hear them, you really get a sense that they're almost Bob Dylan reminiscent lyrically. In just their simplicity and how they cut right through to your heart and really touch on the true nature of what it means to be a human, because she really wrote from a very vulnerable place, being who she was, and then also understanding that she didn't have much time. So she was really able to do that. And you asked me about the connection of the Taylors. They're here tonight to perform some of her songs. She wrote, I think we got 12 in the can before she passed. And Ben Taylor took on, in the last year, he came in and he helped her produce all 12 of her songs, and so that they're some in some form they are done. And he's recorded a couple. Kate has recorded a couple. They're going to perform some tonight. And what Ben Taylor has done is nothing short of not only a miracle, given the sound of her voice. It's like one of the most humbling things to watch someone do out of just the goodness of their heart, because he believed in the music so much. I think. I hope I can say that for him. And he just hit a grand slam with it. It just sounds so good, and we're so honored, and I'm so excited to share. Along with Ben and Kate, I'm so excited to share with you guys some of her music.
I don't know. It's hard to even say this without getting emotional. That through much of your mom's life, she was protecting the brand of the Blues Brothers, but really a marketing expert on John and his legacy. The way the books, the films, all the nuanced approaches that she endeavored to share that legacy, celebrate John and beyond. I think that that's what we're here doing tonight, because this Blues Brothers Con, the sequel, because it's the second one, is really dedicated to Judy. And this tribute tonight is, I think, what you're talking about. So we're going to have a little bit of a celebration before the Blues Brothers come and take the stage tonight, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's when Ben and Kate will come out. I synced 2 of her songs as she finished. I cut them to some video, and they're going to have the lyrics, and we'll play them produced, finished tonight that Ben produced. So yeah, that's the idea. That's the celebration. And I'm personally, it's funny. I think because she just passed away last month, and I'm still very much grieving her loss. I think that's really where my focus is. I think obviously my focus is always on Dan and Jim in some way, but tonight it really is about Judy to me tonight. So,
Luke, I thank you for saying that. Thank you for being so sort of open and vulnerable. When you said so cute and so fucking cute, I wasn't planning on saying this, but I'm going to, because I think you'll enjoy hearing it. Judy was cute. She was precious, and she took the time to respond to people. And sometimes I would ask her a question about, like, the Rhonda Coulee piece when we were putting one of those episodes together that we were doing, and she was so gracious with her time. But sometimes I would just message and check in on her. So this is precious.
Oh man.
She was not always the fastest to see the text and respond. So
for sure.
This was recent. This was this summer. I had sent her a text just saying, "How are you? I am thinking about you." She read it on Father's Day, and her thinking that I sent it to her on Father's Day, probably her response was, "Thank you, James. I think I would have made a great father." like I'm thinking about you today or something, and that was what she said. That's all she said.
That's very Judy.
Yeah.
Very cute. That's very sweet. And I think just really quick, is something you had said reminded me of something. You had talked about championing John and his legacy. I think that's in two pieces. One, it was her life too. I think that they were so tight, so close, and coming from Wheaton together, and coming from, where we are right now, we're in Joliet, and coming from a place like this, and then to be, arguably one of the biggest stars in the world, I think was a roller coaster they were both on. And when he tragically got off, for lack of a better words, I think she just wanted it to be remembered the right way because of things like the Bob Woodward book and things that I think she felt were very unfair. And, at the time, given the way he passed, which, was such a taboo. And now I think people are much more, empathetic to that type of situation. I think she just wanted it. I think she fought tooth and nail for it to be remembered for what it was, which is an amazing, amazing legacy of art, culture, laughter, and I think that's what she was fighting for. Oh no, I've done the unforgivable. I've kicked the thing. I'm sorry. Did I just blow out your ears?
So close.
Okay, I'm sorry. Trying not to.
Up till the very end, Luke. No, the way you said that was really remarkable. Yeah. And before we started recording, we were talking about like my young boys who have seen, Father of the Year, the Blues Brothers R-rated film. Question for you. For those of us that just, kind of look at Luke and go, what was it like growing up, in your family? And, are there any other personal stories or anecdotes maybe related to those relationships, John, Jim, Danny, that I'm sure you've got dozens of them, but,
That is a tough question. Well, what's interesting is that my mom is very much kind of the third blues brother in many ways, and one that really nobody knew, really. I mean, think to the general public. And because I have no real blood relation to John, I think I'm even more in the shadows in that way of the brand. So I was always kind of a fly on the wall, but yet at the same time, I always considered Jim and Danny to be like uncles to me. They were always incredibly welcoming into their families, which became my family. Things that stand out in my mind. Here's one thing that I was just saying yesterday that really is so impressive about working with Dan. I mean, from a personal relationship, Dan is, speaking with Dan. Have you ever spoken with Dan? Speaking with him, you realize immediately that this is one of the most brilliant. And I'm not blowing smoke. Danny is one of the most brilliant. He's like, I think Billy Murray used to call him their resident genius on Saturday Night Live, and he really is quite. It's impressive to listen to him speak, and I think it was really apparent to me one time we were filming something for a coffee brand that we were working on, and Danny came in, and kind of how Danny sometimes kind of grunts in, and he sits down, and I wasn't even sure he knew what exactly was going to be on the prompter, and if he had read anything. And the prompter came on, and he just sat up and he's like, "Hi, I'm Dan," and the meat, it was like boom, it was like the mit, and I just was watching it from behind the camera, and I was blown away. I could not believe how. And I was watching it, and I said, "This is like watching." This is like watching Dave Ortiz and peak Red Sox hit a home run. Sorry, I am from Boston, so I know we're in Chicago. Let's see, it's like Sammy Sosa.
I'm a Dodgers fan.
Oh
so
God,
you're not,
Mookie Betts.
There you go. Okay,
hitting a grand slam, and like when you see something of that caliber, when it really is interesting how somebody can be so much more than what you're expecting. Like watching a professional athlete was the comparison I was trying to make. And just stuff like that. Jimmy, same way. He can really turn it on and light up a room, and watching his professionalism is inspiring. And they've always, I guess I have some random little stories that aren't coming to my mind now. But that's really what the love I think from their family to me, who is somebody who I think they could have maybe not been as welcoming towards, and they treated me like one of their own, and for that I'm forever grateful.
That's great. Now, I do have to ask you this. When your mom was on with us, the phone kept ringing. Now, the mystery has always been, was that you on the phone?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
And she improved and said it was Chevy. So, right?
That's a good memory.
One of the fantastic moments of that.
It could
that
have been
hour and a half.
You know what's funny? Here's a quick story. One time I was on my couch at home. It was a rainy Sunday, and I was just I had a long work week, and I was so looking forward to the rain, and it was raining, and all of a sudden someone's in my window going like this. And I look over and it's Bill Murray, and he had a telescope in his hands, and he's like looking around, and he has his telescope. And I was like, what? And I wasn't expecting to see him, and I don't really know Bill that well, but it was just so random. And so it could have been Chevy Chase. Like, you never know with her, because
Right, yeah.
I always used to call her my like Z-list celebrity, because she would be like totally normal person, no one would know she is, and then she would tell me we were gonna have dinner with, I don't know, the Queen of England or something, and it was always very interesting growing up with her as my mother, and anyone who knew her knows she radiated more love than anybody. She really was a special person.
So there's the answer, ladies and gentlemen. That if you're Luke, you wake up on a Sunday, rainy Sunday, look out the window, and there's Bill Murray with a telescope. Luke, what else would you want to share with anybody? How to either find you online or anything that you're working on that you would like to plug. Just anything for the community. We're all very, very grateful to have you with us today.
Yes, thank you. Well, anybody out there who wants to follow the Blues Brothers Instagram, I'm running it. I have been running it for the last however long it's been in existence, and I'm trying to continue the love there for the characters and Danny and Jim and what we have coming out in the future. So, it's at Blues Brothers Official. And then I think, we're working right now on a Blues Brothers documentary. And there are several other projects, including a comic book that Stella Aykroyd and I are writing. And hopefully it'll come out sometime, hopefully early next year, where we're taking the utmost respect for what it is, and trying to champion it into something that can sustain something, because it's been, quite a while since something has really fresh and exciting has come from this brand. And there's a lot of, I think, brand fatigue with, old brands revamping and this and that. And I think we're really taking our time. We've been writing this for about a year and a half, and I think we're really trying to keep in mind what brands and, legacies have done it the wrong way, and find ways to do it right. So, keep an eye out for that. And other than that, I thank you guys for taking me on and having me here today.
Thank you.
Our pleasure, Luke. We've got lots of exclusive footage, and we'll have some more interviews coming up, so stick around.
Hello, Joliet. All right. My name is Luke. My mother was the beautiful Judy Belushi Pisano. My mother was a champion for the Blues Brothers and the Blues Brothers brand for nearly 40 years. Married to John Belushi and partner to Danny, Jim, and everybody who has also championed the Blues Brothers legacy for the last 45 years. And I'd like to just take a moment to give her a round of applause for all of her hard work and everything she put into the Blues Brothers.
Jingle bell with the power, heart beats with strength, a showman with a lyric, a flower with wings, a flower with wings.
We are sitting down with Tom Bones Malone, a good friend of the Saturday Night Network. He's been with us before. How you doing today, Tom?
So nice of you to have me on your show.
We are so glad to be with you. You were here 2 years ago when they had the inaugural Blues Brothers Con.
August 2022, we were here. I was a special guest with this band, and now I'm a regular member of the band. 2 years later, we just played a private party in Wilmington. We played in Chicago. We played, we're all over the place.
That's great.
You're excited to be back. Your involvement in the film, you're on camera, but you're also heard behind the scenes of the music and the production of all that. We've talked about that over the years. Just give a quick rundown to our audience. What do you remember most about the film?
Well, I just I had a great time making the movie. I arranged the music for the movie, and doing dancing scenes, doing speaking lines. The whole thing was just a lot of fun.
I do want to ask you about one specific scene, and it's one of the most classic scenes in the movie. So filming at Country Bob's bunker, what was that like with the beer bottles coming at you? And
Well, after the Briefcase Full of Blues album came out, it was a big hit. Danny started writing a script for a movie. One night at Saturday Night Live, he says, Bones, could you come up to my office after the show? Now, the show ends at 1 a.m. So I said, sure, Dan. So I go up there. He tells me he's writing a script for a movie. So he wanted to know some stories about my life. So I started playing professionally on the saxophone in South Mississippi in the middle of nowhere with really sleazy clubs. So I told him a story about it going to a place that had chicken wire over the bandstand. Because when the fight started, people would start throwing things, and it was to make the bandstand safe. And he put that in the movie.
it's brilliant. Did any glass hit you as those bottles were coming at you?
Well, we were in Bob's Country Bunker for about a week. They built the exterior of Bob's Country Bunker on the back lot at Universal in Los Angeles, and they did the interior was in a sound studio. We were in there for a week, all day, and they had smoke machines making it look like a smoky club. They had cases and cases and cases of long neck brown beer bottles that shattered very quickly. They were made of sugar, I think. Oh. So during the breaks, we would hit each other over the head with them.
That's fantastic.
Tom's career is just, you've played with everybody, you've arranged so much music, you've been on multiple films and TV, but, we're here gathered for the Blues Brothers, obviously, here today, and everything kind of connects with Saturday Night Live, which is exciting for us because this is the Saturday Night Network. The Blues Brothers started as an opening act, I think, right?
Well, here's where the Blues Brothers actually started. I was the arranger for Saturday Night Live from 1975 to 1985, arranger and musician. So in 1978, I'm called into a meeting with John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, just the three of us. And they're developing these characters that wear sunglasses. So I wrote an arrangement of a song called Rocket 88 by James Cotton. I rehearsed the Saturday Night Live band, did it for Lorne Michaels, the producer, didn't make the show. So the next week, John and Danny are still hot on this idea about the Blues Brothers, so I arranged a song called Hey Bartender. We rehearsed the Saturday Night Live band, did it for Lorne Michaels. Week number 2, Lorne shot us down. Lorne says, frankly, I don't see anything funny about the Blues Brothers. So week number 3, Danny and John gave up. They said, if Lorne doesn't like it, we're wasting our time if we're not getting on the show. So week number 3, we did nothing. Lorne comes out to read through at 3:15 or so on Wednesday afternoon, and he says, the show's 3 minutes short. What are we going to do? John and Danny immediately jumped on Lorne and said, Lorne, the Blues Brothers. So Lorne says, we have nothing worthwhile to put in those 3 minutes. You guys might as well make fools of yourselves. He put us on. And he put us at the end of the show, so if the show ran long, he could cut us. But the show did not run long. We got on, and the rest is history. But it was this close to never happening.
Amazing.
It is.
What else can you tell us about the early years of SNL? You had so much time at the show. Any fun stories as far as even any other cast besides Dan and?
Oh well, spring of 1976, a group called The Band comes on the show, and they asked me to write some horn arrangements. The music director of the show asked me to write some horn arrangements for them. They fell in love with me and took me on tour with them in the summer of '76, and I ended up being in a movie called The Last Waltz, which was a Martin Scorsese documentary concert on Thanksgiving in San Francisco at Winterland, Thanksgiving 1976. Wow. Let's see. So many. Oh, my God. I was a music director from the show from 81 to 85. Olivia Newton-John's going to be on the show next week. Wow. Well, what time is the band going to load in? She doesn't have a band. It was a studio album. You have to put the whole thing together. Drum machines, multi-synthesizers. Same thing happened with Robert Plant and the Honey Drippers. Oh, wow, he's on the show next week. What time does the band load in? He doesn't have a band. It was a studio album. You have to put the whole band together. There were all kinds of situations like that. Also, I got a call one day from my unit manager. I was the contractor for the show from 81 to 85. I would fill out a contractor report and send it downstairs, and she would type out the union contract and send it to the union. So Liz Anderson was her name. She calls me up one day. She says, I got a new job. I'm like, great. What's your new job? She says, I'm the associate producer of the David Letterman show. I said, what's that? And she says, you've never seen it. It comes on real late. I mean, you've never seen it because it comes on real early in the morning. But we're changing the show to late night, and we're looking for someone to lead a 4-piece band and be a personality. Would you be interested? So the financial offer she made was about 20% of what I was making at the time. I was the arranger, contractor, music director, and multi-instrumentalist musician on Saturday Night Live. So the offer she made was about 20% of what I was making. So I said, call this kid Paul Schaefer. Paul Schaefer had just come back to town. He went out to LA to be in a sitcom as an actor with Greg Avigan, and it went about 6-7 episodes. Network pulled the plug. So he came back to town about 2 weeks before this phone call. I said, you should call this kid Paul Schaefer. He'll take care of it. Never heard another word. A month later, I'm up in my office writing an arrangement, and I had a network feed monitor in my office. Suddenly I hear this band playing, and it's downstairs in Studio 6H. It's Paul Schaefer, Steve Jordan, Will Lee, and Hiram Bullock. He got the job. Nobody even told me. So Paul was nice enough to call me when the show moved to CBS. He was nice enough to call me to be his trumpet player for the first 4 years, and then he hired a full-time trumpet player, and I moved over to trombone, bari sax, and other instruments. But Paul's a dear friend of mine still.
Absolutely, and we have had you and Paul together on this podcast over the years, which is great. So, as the music director during those Dick Ebersol years, people of the community know, Lauren had stepped away for a period of time. I would be remiss not to mention, because you and I had talked here recently, we've lost a legend in Bob Tischler, who was associated with the show. But can you tell us a little bit about
dear friend? Okay, Bob
yeah.
Tischler started out as producer of the National Lampoon Radio Hour, producer and engineer, along with John Belushi. Belushi loved him. Bill Murray and all kinds of other people, Gilda Radner, all kinds of people that eventually ended up on Saturday Night Live were involved in this show. Bob Tischler, amazing engineer. He recorded all three of the real, he was producer and engineer, recorded all three of the real Blues Brothers albums. Briefcase Full of Blues, soundtrack album, Made in America. Now, Made in America and Briefcase Full of Blues were edited out of live concerts. We did a 5-week tour, and he edited Made in America out of that tour. Briefcase Full of Blues, we were opening act for Steve Martin at the Universal Amphitheater. Some of those songs have 30 edits in them.
That's incredible.
That's incredible. And there was no one-night performance on any of those records. It's all edited, and he was dead on with editing. Back then, it wasn't like Pro Tools. You had to cut the tape with a razor blade, and if you screwed up, the whole thing was ruined.
And anyway. I don't think people realize this is the same Bob Tischler that many of us know as, writer producer at SNL.
Well, after the Blues Brothers movie, Bob Tischler became a line producer at Saturday Night Live, 1981 to 85. He hired me to be the music director because he knew I could take care of it. We worked together very closely on these albums. Dear friend of mine too. His country house was about 15 minutes from my country house in upstate New York, not even, 12 minutes, and very close friend of mine. And after Saturday Night Live, he was the producer of the David Brenner Show for a couple of years. So, dear friend of mine called me up about 5 months ago, said he had pancreatic cancer. So I said, well, I got to come up and see you. He says, well, I'm taking this medication. I'm not feeling really well. So how long do you have? He said, 18 months. Okay, well, when you start feeling better, then I'll come up. And I just saw on the news.
It's a terrible loss.
Terrible loss. Well, also we lost Judy Belushi, terrible loss. Yeah. And we also lost Eric Gardner, who was in charge. He's the manager for Blues Brothers Enterprises. Anybody wants to use Blues Brothers material or use the name or use the merchandise, had to go through him. He was also Paul Schaefer's personal manager, business manager, and he's also a big loss for this. So we lost three big Blues Brothers people in the last 5 weeks.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about your relationship with John and Danny as far as the Blues Brothers movie?
I was a arranger for the music. All the music that the band played was pre-recorded. The only live music in the show is John Lee Hooker on Maxwell Street. Everything else was pre-recorded. John Landis, the director, who directed Animal House and directed the Blues Brothers movie, and the Blues Brothers 2000, he didn't want somebody to say, he didn't want, after taking a perfect video take, he didn't want somebody to say, "Oh, I missed a note, we have to redo it." No, he didn't want to hear that. So we pre-recorded all the music, and then we just pretended to play the rest of the time.
Which is why we hear some Barry sax, right?
Funny you should mention that. Lou Delgado actually played the baritone sax.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he's credited on the soundtrack album properly, but he played the baritone sax solo on Sweet Home Chicago.
Another SNL band, longtime player. Yeah.
Yeah, on tours though, I played some of the baritone sax, and Tom Scott played some of the baritone sax. I played the baritone sax on Shotgun Blues, for instance. Tom Scott would play tenor or baritone sax. I would play trumpet, trombone, tenor sax, or baritone sax.
He does them all. He does them all, folks.
I'm recording a big band album at my house by myself.
We were just talking about that before we started recording live here. Tell us a little bit about that. You've shared some of those recordings with me over the years, and it just blows my mind.
Well, I wrote some big band arrangements of some popular songs, and typical recording has 2 alto saxes, 2 tenor sax, baritone sax, 4 trumpets, 3 trombones, bass trombone, bass piano, and drums. I just finished "You Made Me So Very Happy." I just got a bunch of stuff. I've got about 7 done, and I'll have a whole album here pretty soon.
That's exciting, man. That's exciting.
So we're coming up on a big anniversary with SNL, 50th anniversary, which is hard to believe that it's been that long, and I'm sure...
Seems like yesterday, but I was at the 40th anniversary, and it was quite an event.
Do you think you're going to be at the 50th? Or are you going to?
Matter of fact, Donald Trump shook my hand.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I haven't watched it since.
Everybody knows Tom knows how much.
Don't get me started.
That's right.
Anyway, let's save our country, and let's be democratic.
Amen.
Anyway, it was great. You saw Garrett Morris. Saw Chevy, and everybody was there. It was just an amazing event. So I'm sure there'll be an event next year, and I'm sure I'll be invited, and look forward to that.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, it means so much, Tom. You might be getting a 5-timers jacket here sometime soon, because you have been on our podcast probably more times than most of our interview subjects. Once with Paul Schaefer, as we mentioned earlier, and it just is always such a pleasure to talk to you. The talent is and here's the remarkable thing, folks, is that you talk to Danny, you talk to Jim, you talk to Judy, you talk to anyone, and Tom is part of a conversation 2 or 3 sentences later. It's like the 6 degrees of separation, and everybody has just the highest regard, positive attributes to refer to in terms of Tom Bones Malone. Thank you, my friend, for being here.
Well, I'm writing a book now. I have 100 chapters done so far. And working title is Name Dropper, because I play with everybody in the business.
There it is. There it is. Well, thanks so much, sir.
Thank you for your time.
My pleasure, and thank you for having me on your show.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Stick around. We have some more Blues Brothers Con 2.0 coming up on the podcast.
We are here at Old Juliet Prison, the Blues Brothers Con, the sequel right here. There's a car show happening right behind me. Gates are getting ready to open. There's Bluesmobiles. There's a couple extra ones here. This is fantastic.
That's right. We are here again at the Blues Brothers Con, the sequel, and we have the great Jim Belushi here with us. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
How much fun is this?
Great fun, and thanks for coming out all the way down to Joliet, Illinois.
Yeah. So 2 years ago, you were here for the inaugural Blues Brothers Con. That was a great time.
Oh, it was great. It was a great evening, a great day. People came from all over. We had a magical show, and Judy was here. She sang. It was a great way to kick this place off.
Judy opened up the program and did some of her original music. Your family was here. It was a good time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you follow the music, and you always follow a good time. Music is just, that's what's great about the Blues Brothers. It represents music, mischievousness and a mission from God. I mean, you had all three of them, right?
That's right.
So it's a whole meal.
So can you talk a little bit about how you became a blues brother?
Well, Danny wanted me to join the band, and I said no. I said, I feel very weird. I can't take over for that, you know. Those are his shoes, and, you know. And Danny went, oh, no, Jimmy, absolutely not. It's like a law firm, and one of the partners goes down, and the brother comes in, or the son comes in, and they just add his name to the list. And we're just adding your name to the list. It's like playing one of the great roles like McMurphy in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Every actor wants to play that role. And this one, you get to play a blues brother, Jimmy. I said, but I can't play John. I can't play Jake Blues. She goes, no, you wouldn't be Jake. You'd be Zurashida. Brother Zurashida. Brother Z Blues. And I said, Danny, you don't think it's weird for me to take over? Absolutely not. I go, well, if you don't think it's weird, I don't know why I'm thinking it's weird.
I mean, coming from an original Blue Brother and the best pitchman in the business, right?
Yeah,
Dan Aykroyd.
I mean, he's the best. And I said, well, I don't know if I can sing the blues. I said, I've sang on Broadway, and, you know, I mean, I can carry a tune, but the blues is a whole different thing. He goes, well, you better learn.
well, we know you can rap.
Yeah, rapping Jimmy B. Hello, everybody, and how do you do? My name's Jimmy B. Gonna rap for you. Tonight's the night to feel all right. Lord knows best part is it's Saturday night to chill out, cool, and say it again. To chill out, cool. Now let's begin. Boom, 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 boom. By the way, Bones Malone, who's here tonight, wrote the music.
Wrote that.
Yeah.
Music director during that time. So this is not lost on us, though. You know, Blues Brothers is the central theme here. We at the Saturday Night Network, all things SNL. We know that the Blues Brothers got their start, but we would be remiss to not really talk and recognize about your time at that show. 50 years coming up here. We just literally had some conversations with your castmates Mary Gross and Gary Kroger just the other day, and they actually said, make sure you tell Jim that we said hello.
Ah, that's nice. They're lovely people. I like the way you said that you did your time. I mean, I wound up in a prison riot doing time. And I'll tell you, those 2 years I was on Saturday Night, first of all, weren't enough.
No.
I think it takes 3 to 4 years, with the exception of a few brilliant people like John and Billy and Danny, to get the groove of that show. And I was just starting to get it. And then Lauren came back in and got rid of everybody that Dick Ebersol had hired and started anew. But that time was the hardest thing I've ever done in show business.
Really?
Oh yeah, I mean it was a pressure cooker, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done, including divorce.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like a mass unit of comedy, though. I mean, those 2 years gave me such great skill and knowledge and comfort and competence that I take that with me everywhere I go.
Which Bill and I, we were talking about this. It seems longer than 2 years in the breadth of work that there is. And I know you've got some things. The chess coach.
Oh, that was one of my favorites.
I love it, love it, love it. High school chess coach.
I love the chess coach. I did very well with the short film pieces.
Yeah.
The live pieces, I did good. I did fine with.
He introduces the axe. Mary Gross and I, we were talking about that one the other day too. But you have some, Bill, that you maybe wanted to get into.
Well, the one with Mary Gross and Harry Anderson, where you went to the post office and she remarried while you were gone to the post office because you were 20 minutes late. Do you remember this one?
I don't remember that sketch.
It's really good.
That's a great premise.
Yeah, it was a great premise. But the one I'm really interested in, it's considered one of the best episodes of SNL ever, with Don Rickles. And I don't know if you remember working with Don. He's my favorite comedian of all time.
Yeah.
But you're in the witness protection sketch with him.
Oh, right.
You were such a professional. You didn't break while Piscopo's losing his shit.
Well, listen. I was raised in a different environment.
Yeah.
You know, I was raised at Second City, and if you cracked up on stage, you were considered. The producer would be, the director would be, just think you're immature and an amateur.
Right.
And, the only one that can crack up on stage is Carol Burnett. And she did it, and she did it well. But that's not what we do here. We stay in character. We stay in relationship. Don't ever break. I mean, I find it now. It's like I've been shooting a movie, and I'll start improvising in a scene, and the actor across from me will crack up, and it's like, oh, you just blew the take.
Right. Yeah.
Hold on to that character.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it happens organically sometimes. I mean, I saw Bill Murray, crack Gilda up once. Once. Okay, Billy was going for her. But you never see John or Danny crack up. You never see, like, now, it's common almost. I mean, I counted the other day. I watched the news, Weekend Update.
Mm-hmm.
And my daughter was watching with my daughter. I said, now watch this newscast. I said, let's count how many times they laugh or laugh at their own jokes. 24.
Oh, my 24. Goodness.
I said, that's just not the way it's done. You never see Danny crack up during Weekend Update.
Right.
You never saw any of those great guys, Bill Murray, none of those guys. You stay in character. That was the way we were trained. So when I see that fourth wall broken that way, it disturbs me. But I'm old now. Wow. The new generation, it's a different thing. It's just about having fun.
I think there are still some, because I don't know if you've seen the Heidi Gardner sketch, the Beavis and Butthead sketch, which was completely viral earlier this year. And she broke for the first time in like 8 or 9 years. She's been on the show for so long. And it went viral because she wasn't the kind of person who breaks. So there are still some people who follow that code.
Listen, I have an improv group with Larry Joe Campbell and Megan Grano and Josh Funk. And I'm the leader. And we do a whole show of improvising. And before we went out on stage, I'm like the leader. I'm going to stay in character, stay in the relationship, be true to the scene. Do not crack up. Let's stay solid no matter what happens.
Yeah.
We go out for the first scene. Josh and Larry put machine gun bullets through me. They were ripping into me on stage in character. They were so funny, I couldn't get a word out because I was laughing so hard. I got off stage, and Josh and Larry go, hey, man, thanks for that coaching. It really helped. They're like, screw you, Belushi, giving us fucking notes, you asshole. Oh, don't crack up, huh? All right, let's see your courage. So, I mean, it happens, and when it happens organically, it's so fun, and it's in the moment. But sometimes it's being used as a device to get through shoddy material. And, I don't know. I'm a little bit of a purist that way.
That's fair. Yeah.
No, I'm with you. So we talked a little Blues Brothers, obviously, a little Saturday Night Live, but you got a lot going on, brother. I mean, you're doing films, you're doing things outside of the industry. What can you plug some of the stuff?
I try to stay as busy as I can so I don't have to think about any of the grief or losses in my life. And if you stay busy, you don't have to think about the past. But as soon as it slows down, it's like, oh, yeah, that's right. I got divorced 3 times. I should be feeling really bad.
These are the therapy moments.
I stay busy. Stay busy. Stay busy. There's a great line in the movie I just did. Bottle it up. Put it down. Lock it in the basement down there. You can't show your emotions and your anxieties. Lock it up. But, yeah, I stay busy. I've been very fortunate in my career to really be busy all the time. Always doing something. I just finished 2 movies. One with Kristen Stewart directing, which is a really beautiful, beautiful script she adapted personally from a novel called Chronology of Water. Very beautiful piece. I hope it goes to the Cannes Film Festival next year. And then I just did the goofiest damn comedy in Montana. I just literally got back yesterday called Gutter Muckers. And it's just the stupidest, funniest script, man. Bobby Lee is in it. Saturday Night Live girl, Leslie
Jones.
Leslie Jones is in it, yeah.
Great.
A bunch of guys. But anyway, that was fun. So, I stay busy, and in between, I grow pot in Oregon.
Yeah, what can you tell us about that?
Well, I did a TV show around it called Growing Belushi. You can get it on Hulu now or Discovery on Demand, and reruns they play. But it was a reality show. Never did anything like that, and we improvised it. It was all improvised. With Larry Joe Campbell, my cousin Chris, who's never been in front of a camera before. He's so funny on it. And the point of that show was to educate people on the medicine,
Right.
and how it's grown, so they understand the clarity of the cleanliness. Also to entertain.
Yeah.
So it's funny, it's informative, and that was quite a trip. It was really something.
Lots of great accolades are out there, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers are familiar with it. But it's just, it's a tangent that you've got this celebrity that is known for films and comedy and whatnot. And
Well,
then
you got to understand. I'm not doing this as a money play.
right.
I'm growing it. It's my farm. I'm growing it. I learned how to grow it, and I believe in the medicine. I mean, the wellness of cannabis includes, help with Alzheimer's, cancer, chemotherapy, sleeplessness, hopelessness.
I think that's where the
back pain,
accolades
PTSD,
are coming from.
yeah.
Right.
But it also includes, the taste of food, the sound of music, the touch of your lover's skin. And it also makes you feel good.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with feeling good.
Not at
And
all.
this is a medicine. Everybody is screaming inside. And everybody uses medicine to hold on to that scream, especially since the pandemic.
Absolutely.
And what is the medicine that's most readily available to people? Alcohol. And I'm not anti-alcohol, but let's look at the numbers. How many people die a year in car accidents from alcoholic drivers? How many families get destroyed and swallowed up with addiction? It doesn't do anything for you physically except for bloat you and poison your liver. Women get beaten from drunk, pot. Nobody died smoking grass. Nobody.
Hey.
Okay? I used to be a bouncer, and I never broke up a fight between two potheads. It's a gentle, sweet,
That's right.
herb medicine. So I'm saying, if you have to reach for a medicine, first of all, the first medicines are, of course, yoga, or jogging, working out, eating well. But if you're going to reach for a medicine, don't go for pills, downers, speed, alcohol. Why don't you go to a little grass? It's gentle and sweet. It brings down the PTSD shakes that you get from the physiological repercussions of whatever happened to you. So, you know what? Here's the real point. The real point is I had to figure out why I was in show business.
Yeah.
Why am I an actor? Somebody made me answer this. And I said, well, I guess the reason I act is to make people feel good. Like at Second City, you may come with your wife or your lover, and you worked all week, and you had a glass of wine, and it's Friday night, you're driving, you can't find a parking space, you start bitching at each other, and you get there on time, and then they watch the show we put on, and those two lovers go home feeling good about each other, feeling good about themselves. So we make people feel good. What does cannabis do? Makes people feel good. Yeah. So I believe I'm so on purpose. That's why the reality show, along with the message of the medicine of cannabis, fit together so well. I can bring show business and this other business that makes people feel good together in one episode or one series.
If you're just joining us, we're having some real deep conversations here with Jim Belushi. No, but seriously, that is what those messages about cannabis is what those positive accolades are out there going, thank you.
Well, and listen, I think, look, we're releasing the Blues Brothers brand and the Belushi's Farm brand and a couple other brands in states. We're in 16 states now.
Yeah.
And we just made a deal here in Illinois that I'm very excited about. The Blues Brothers represents, like I said earlier, music, which is as close to God as you're going to get. I mean, you hear gospel singers, you know God is just coming right through them and spilling the word. So the music, mischievousness, the fun you can have with pot, the fun in the Blues Brothers with John going, I get those American Express traveler's check. That was such a great line. And then here's the most important part for me, is the mission from God.
Yeah.
And with cannabis and performing, we are on a mission from God to heal and bring enlightenment and peacefulness to people. So that's why the Blues Brothers brand is synonymous with cannabis. And, Judy, God rest her soul, and Danny gave me permission to use that beautiful logo to put on our healing cannabis.
That's great.
I love how you, just going back, talked about when you were asked by someone why you act. And, you've talked a little bit about just, trying to manage your own, personal well-being. And I mean, I saw you come out here. There's these barricade, people who can't see this, where everybody's screaming for Jim. I mean, that's because in so many different ways you have inspired even these, like, I've got my two little sons here, 7 and 4, who like, there's Jim Belushi. Like, you're in people's homes and you've got this, you share this gift with so many people, whether it's in films, whether it's TV.
I've heard so many people, I mean, I can't even tell you this. Even the other day, the father was in the hospital, dying of cancer, and he would watch According to Jim on reruns over and over. It was the only thing that made him feel good and laugh. I was, wow, thank you. A woman the other day introduced herself. Goes, my mother, and I couldn't remember who she was. I went to high school with her. She was dying of cancer, and somebody got a message to you, and you sent a poster and a photograph and a really nice letter to her. She was, that just made her day in the hospital. It made her for weeks. She would talk about it and show it. I'm so grateful that you took the time. It's like, wow, making people feel good.
You never know the lives you're touching.
Yeah.
So let's end on a note with SNL. The 50th anniversary is coming up. Are we going to see the Blues Brothers at SNL 50?
You have to talk to Lauren. You have to talk to Tina Fey.
That was one of the great moments of the 40th. Is you coming out.
On the 40th, the greatest moment was when Prince jumped up on stage.
Well, there's that.
Yeah, Taylor Swift, Prince. Danny and I got that going, that gig.
Absolutely.
Lauren put, were you there?
The after party is what he's talking about.
Lauren put all those instruments up on that stage, and Danny's like, let's go up.
Let's do it.
And we started, and then everybody started jumping on stage, and then Prince at the end. It happened to be my wife's birthday.
Oh, wow.
And she said to me afterwards, she goes, Jim, that was so thoughtful of you to bring Prince for my birthday party. I said, oh, baby, I love you. Danny and I did an intro on the 40th. And, we rehearsed the intro, rehearsed it. I just standing with him, He wanted me to be with him. And we stood in our spot, and then we came up. Audience stood and applauded for Danny.
Yeah.
And they didn't stop. And I was like, God damn, I forgot, because they know him so well.
Right.
What a legend he is.
Yeah.
It was one of the most beautiful moments for me to be standing next to a friend of mine who just, because he doesn't walk with that. He walks like a real man, a good guy. So the 50th, I hope Lauren invites us back. It would be an honor to be there on the 50th.
Fantastic. And you're a legend in your own right, so let's not cut you short there.
They've been calling me that these last 2 movies. He goes, wow, you're a legend. And I'm like, I've never heard that phrase with me before. A legend? I don't know. Well, you've been doing it for almost 50 years. You got like 250 credits on your IMDb. I have done a lot, I guess.
So what are you looking forward to most tonight when you guys hit that stage? In this?
Same thing I look forward to every time. Dancing with that big Canadian man. I love dancing with Danny. But tonight's a special night because it's, we're honoring Judy, who was the Blues sister. As Danny says, Blues Brothers wouldn't be here if Judy wasn't there. All that she did, the books she wrote. But for me personally, it's a very special night because my daughter is Bessie Blue, we call her. Her name's Jamie Belushi, but Bessie Blue, Blue's sister. She's 25. She's a singer. She just moved down to Nashville. She's singing 3 songs tonight. She's joined the band.
That's fantastic.
So I'm really excited about that.
Fantastic.
You're going to flip when you hear her sing.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, and I'm going to do one song with her.
That's great.
Thank you so much.
No, thank
Jim
you, man.
Belushi.
And continued success with your show. And thank you for honoring all the men and women that have traipsed across that 8H. And it's just really cool that you're doing that, man.
Thank you.
It means a lot. It means a lot. The time spent there, however I said that, you did your time.
I did my time, man. I did my time. I had a great time, but it was definitely hard. And let's put it this way. I had no time to think about any problems that I had in my life. Things were moving too quickly to think about divorce and losses in my life. Well, it was good medicine.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks again, Jim Belushi. Stay tuned for more from the Blues Brothers Con, the sequel.
And now, on this beautiful Illinois summer night, it's time to bring 2 founding artists of BluesCon to our stage. Here in the yard of the world-famous Joliet Correctional Institution, as the prison preservationist organizations, the City of Chicago, the City of Joliet, and the great state of Illinois present for your exclusive listening and dancing pleasure 2 men who live to keep the music of their brother Jake alive. Will you please welcome from Calumet City, the Legacy Brother Elwood and the Blood Brother Z. Here are Elwood and Z Blues, the genuine, no imitation Blues Brothers.
Are here with Dan Aykroyd, the Dan Aykroyd, Blues Brother and original cast member of Saturday Night Live. Thank you, Dan, so much for taking time.
Welcome to the backstage here at Joliet Correctional Institution for our concert tonight. How about that talent on stage? These are the best. And we have to give them a forum and a venue to play. That's what this is all about.
Tell us who we have out here right now.
Right now, is this Lonnie, is this Toronto Cannon or Lonnie Brooks? I'm not sure. But it's someone great. I had a little Ed and the Imperials former. But we got to give these people a place to play.
We have a story with somebody who's right before you guys, right? Isn't it Salgado?
Yeah, Curtis Salgado. John met him when they were doing Animal House out there in Eugene, Oregon, and Curtis turned him on to a lot of great songs. And actually, he's one of the greatest amplified electric harmonica players on the planet. And he was a big influence on the Blues Brothers. Yeah. So he's going to play tonight, yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit, Dan, about what it means to you to have this movie, this iconic movie, still mean so much to so many people after 45 years?
Well, I'm very grateful for how it was received in the beginning of its life, and then grateful for how it's stayed alive through the generations. And what's joyous about tonight is that you're going to see, families bringing younger people, kids that play drums, play harmonica, play guitar. And I've had a lot of people walk up to me, young people, and say, I watched that movie and I'm a musician today and I write blues and I sing music. So, to have it penetrate that deeply is, I'm humbled and grateful. Yeah.
And it resonates throughout the generations, like you said.
It does, because the music is honest.
Yes.
The music is honest.
That's right. I recently showed my daughter that movie. It's the first SNL movie she's seen. She's 14, loves it, nose back to front, and you know, it's amazing to see what.
Yeah, so
what
maybe
you're
you
able
can
to
watch a couple of times, 3 times, and it still holds interest.
do. Or 100.
Yeah.
Origin story of the Blues Brothers really comes from the Saturday Night Live days, does it not?
No, we had the act already planned prior to SNL. We did it. We brought it into we brought it into SNL after we'd practiced it with Willie Nelson at the Lone Star Cafe there for a few days, and we conceived of it in Toronto at my old booze can there, my speakeasy, the 505 Club. We conceived of the act then at that time. And then John had all kinds of songs picked out. We had the name, the look. So we brought it to SNL as a fully formed, basically show presentation.
But did we see?
And Lauren was convinced finally, because of the quality of our musicians, that it would work on the show. So, but we performed at the Lone Star and a couple of other places prior to being on the show, and then we did King Bee.
That's what I was going to say.
And that was really the origin of how we appeared on TV in the bee costumes, yeah.
So that was before, prior to the bee costumes, you were still doing what we know now elsewhere, right?
That's right, yeah. And Judy, you know, this tonight is full circle for me and closes a chapter on the Blues Brothers, because Judy is now gone. She joins John, whatever realm he's in, and Judy was the tripod in the three-legged structure of the Blues Brothers. She contributed massively, creatively. She wasn't just John's wife. She was a designer and a writer on the movie, and there would be no Blues Brothers in the form we know today without Judy. Really, yeah, Judy Jackman. Yeah.
You have this wonderful Audible book that you just released, which is fantastic.
That tells the story right there,
and it breaks it down for what's possible from the Blues Brothers. Can you talk a little bit about opening for Steve Martin and what that was like?
There would be no Blues Brothers if Steve hadn't invited us to play. And John got his money from Animal House, and he rented the trailer and the producer and the truck, and he recorded our show opening for Steve Martin. And Steve Martin was so generous to say, I get this, I get what you're doing, this is exciting. And he had his own following. He didn't need us to sell out those tickets. And he generously had us open for him in those shows, and that made the band. So I would say let's put up a marker for Steve Martin, because there'd be no Blues Brothers without him.
And not too much longer after that, you had what's considered by many to be the greatest SNL episode ever, when you're the musical guest with Steve Martin as the host.
There's a lot of good SNL episodes, but I'll take it as, you know, that was a special one for sure. Yes, yeah.
And in the community, truly. I mean, I appreciate you, you know, in the Dan Aykroyd way of you know, humbly downplaying it. I got to tell you, people will refer to that one as one of the top episodes, and it's pretty special.
Yeah, back then, I guess. Yeah, but again, man, they've done so much great stuff since. Wow. Yeah. You could pluck out a few there during the Eddie Murphy years that might hold up to that as well.
And with the 50th anniversary this season, and you being of that initial original cast, what does that feel like? And is it just, I mean, it seems like has to be 50 years have flown by, but there's even this film that is coming out with other actors playing you all. I mean,
it's like being part of a university where your team does well, and you hope for the team to win every time the team goes out to play. You know, it's like being part of a great alumnus organization. You know.
Now, yeah. Are you still a watcher of SNL?
I am when I catch it. Sure.
Is there anyone who sticks out?
I saw the Maya Rudolph show recently. That was
great.
She's superb.
Yeah. So what plans do you have as far as SNL 50? Do you think, you know, some of us, including myself, have said we would love to see all of the original cast host an episode together. So do you think there's any chance of that? You and Lorraine and Jane and Garrett and Billy?
I think the leaning would be more towards getting some of the contemporaries out there to do sketches and open. You know, look at those wonderful Leslie Jones and Melissa McCarthy and, you know, Kate McKinnon and Kristen Wiig.
Right.
Rather than the old, it'd be nice to see them get out there and open the show, rather than, the old cast will be around and we'll be in attendance, but for me, it's going to be a great night of television because I think it starts at 8:30, and I personally would like to be at home watching it because if I was there, I'm gonna miss a great night of television. I would love to I would get a viewing party together wherever I am in the world and watch it. That's really what I think I'm probably going to be doing. Yeah.
We're here for the Blues Brothers today. An earlier interview cited you again as the brains behind creating the script for the film, these characters out of thin air. Actually, in the conversation that we had over there earlier, went so far as to say, and of Dan Aykroyd, the same guy who created the Ghostbusters out of thin air. The way that these iconic films and characters have a legacy, cartoons, lunchboxes. I mean, even the Ecto-1s are over there in the car show. I mean, that's got to be rewarding, but also mind-boggling.
Well, it all comes. It doesn't. I guess the words and the structure comes out of thin air when you put it down on a paper, but it all comes from stimuli. The Blues Brothers came out of my summer in Chicago here in '74, going to the blues clubs, listening to the local politics. The conflict between the church and state. Versus do we tax the state? Do we tax the church or not? Just the Catholic influence, the blues influence, the whole feeling of Calumet City as this distressed industrial area, which was so photogenic to me. So it comes out of that. It comes out of living in Chicago, doing Second City. So the air was thin and rarefied, sure, but it had substance to it that I was able to inhale. And the Ghostbusters comes out of my great-grandfather's work as a spiritualist researcher, So, yeah, I just grew up with that.
So, kind of going off the Ghostbusters part, before we wrap up with you, we've seen the resurgence of Ghostbusters, and you're fantastic in the new movies with this newer cast. Do you think there's ever a chance we'll see Blues Brothers 3.0?
I don't think so, no. I don't think so. But if you look at the first movie and then you go and buy a package there on streaming with the second movie, I would recommend you buy the first one and you buy the second one to go along with it. It's a small G good companion to the first. It's got a great soundtrack. Erykah Badu's number in there, Funky Nassau's worth the price of admission. So buy that and get with the family in your big screen theater and watch both of them back to back. But as to another iteration of it, I don't think it'll happen.
Just kind of in closing here, we've got a community of folks that have just really been looking forward to hearing from you, so we appreciate this. What kinds of things can you share with us in terms of some of your other endeavors?
I would speak to families and to the younger generation. Check out the Blues Brothers. There's much joy there to be had, and it's available and accessible. The records are on Spotify and Amazon, and so are the movies. And buy them, take them home, and watch with your family. Because it's enriching, because the music is real, it's honest.
Thank you so much, Dan Aykroyd, for being with us. It means so much.
Wow, that was incredible. When we first started this podcast, I never knew if we would be able to speak to an original SNL cast member, and the fact that the two of you got to talk to Dan Aykroyd on the show means so much. And just getting to hear from everybody today was absolutely fantastic. So really, thank you both for going out there, for having these conversations. Bill, that must have meant a lot to you as well, to be out there at the prison and speaking to all those people like Belushi and Aykroyd.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a great moment to be able to spend time with all of these folks, get to hear stories that you've never heard before, and then they were all so giving of their time. Jim Belushi, hearing him talk about the things that you just heard him talk about, and of course Dan Aykroyd, like just incredible. Like this guy is number 3 on my list of all-time cast members. So to be able to sit there with him, thanks for thinking of me, John. Thanks, James, for having me as your co-host. And it was just a blast. And the music was fantastic too. Let's not forget that. They put on quite a show. So.
Yeah, I saw some pictures and videos. You guys were partying it up. So we didn't get to talk about that today. But over to you, James.
We will. Yes. The music is what brings people together. Absolutely want to thank my co-hosts, the great Bill Kenney. Thank you so much for coming out there. We had a blast. Producer Jeff Young and Matt for helping with stage management at the Joliet Area Historical Museum. It means a lot. President and CEO Greg Pierbolt, museum anthropologist Sylvia Scoggin. You let us into your home. It was we got a behind the scenes tour. Sylvia, thank you so much. And COO Kelly Klobuchar. It was all your unswerving support and your friendship really means a lot. Thanks to those that came on the podcast with us for their interviews. Daniel de Visé, Luke Pisano, Tom Malone, Jim Belushi, and Dan Aykroyd.
So if you enjoyed the podcast today or any of the interviews in particular, we need to know what you think. So comment below on the video, tell us your thoughts, because we love getting to go out to these conventions and having these conversations. So if you want us to do this even more, we need to know, we need to hear from you. So definitely write below to never miss any of the other shows we have going on here at the Saturday Night Network, including our new series where if you want to learn about Dan Aykroyd and Jim Belushi's time at SNL, you can go back and watch our Everything You Need to Know About Saturday Night Live series. We just released season 10 last week, so we're very excited about that. So you get to see Jim Belushi's time at SNL in full. You got to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube and Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We have a great host countdown series where we're counting down the greatest hosts of all time this summer. We have other SNL stories coming up very soon, so some other interviews before we get to our full coverage of season 50 of Saturday Night Live happening just about a month away. So this is a very exciting time to be an SNL fan, and you got to make sure to follow us on all social platforms as well: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X at the SNL Network. I want to thank James and Bill and everyone involved for taking care of this and going out there and doing these interviews. You guys were fantastic. We have to thank our presenting partner as well, latenighter.com, such an amazing website for late night television. They had some posts about the Blues Brothers Con as well, so if you want to go back and check those out, head over to latenighter.com. And on behalf of James and Bill and everybody at the Blues Brothers Con, the sequel, my name is John Schneider from the SNN, and we will see you next time, everybody. Have a good one.